The cold wind howled through the broken metal of the crash site. Jason pulled his arms tight around his chest, trying to stay warm. His ship had gone down 6 hours ago, deep in the frozen lands of a strange alien world. His radio was dead, his food was low, and the temperature was dropping fast. The sky above him was black and full of stars, but none of them looked familiar. He didn't know where he was or if anyone would ever come for him. His hands shook as he moved around the wreckage, searching for anything useful, just a blanket. Just something to stop the freezing cold. But the wind cut through his jacket like sharp knives. His boots crunched through snow that glowed faint blue under the alien moon. He thought he was alone, completely alone. But then he saw something move at the edge of the trees. Jason froze. His breath caught in his throat. A shape small, quick darted behind a thick tree. He reached for his flare gun, the only weapon. He had left, but the shape didn't attack, didn't charge at him. Instead, it stepped out slowly into the moonlight. It was a girl. She wasn't human. Not completely. Her skin was soft silver, her eyes large and glowing like twin moons. She wore a thin cloak that fluttered in the wind, and on her back was a small bag. She looked at Jason with calm, curious eyes. Then she said in a quiet voice, "You will die if you stay out here." Jason blinked, shocked she spoke English. "Who are you?" he asked, voice shaking from the cold. She didn't answer right away, only walked closer. She knelt beside the wreck and pulled out something rolled up her sleeping bag. She opened it and looked at him. "Get in," she said. "There's only one, so we share." Jason didn't move at first, unsure if it was a trick, but his body was already going numb. And the storm was getting worse. He hesitated, then slowly nodded. The girl crawled into the sleeping bag and held it open for him. Jason crawled in beside her, careful not to touch too much. The bag was warm, much warmer than anything he expected. They lay there in silence, the storm screaming around them. The girl's body was warm, like a tiny fire beside him. Jason's shivers slowly stopped, his mind still racing. He finally asked, "Why are you helping me?" She didn't look at him, only whispered, "Because you look lost." He looked at her face, the way her breath fogged the air. She didn't seem scared of him at all. Her eyes watched the sky, like she was waiting for something. "What's your name?" he asked. She paused for a long time, then said softly, "Sira, Sira," he repeated, the name strange but gentle on his tongue. He told her his name too, and she nodded once. Outside the sleeping bag, something large moved through the snow. Jason tensed, but Sira reached out and touched his arm lightly. "Don't move," she said, her voice barely a breath. "It hunts by movement." Jason didn't breathe, didn't blink. Whatever it was, it stopped near the wreck. Sniffing the air, heavy footsteps crunched in the snow, slow and searching. The creature let out a low, deep growl. Jason could feel Sira trembling beside him, but her eyes stayed locked on the tent flap, ready for anything. Minutes passed, maybe hours, until the sound faded away. Jason finally let out a quiet breath. "What was that?" he whispered. Sira whispered back, "A night stalker. They come for the warmth." He swallowed hard, realizing just how close death had come. Sira looked at him again, this time with something softer in her gaze. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "This place ... It eats the weak." Jason managed a small smile. "Then maybe I'm lucky you found me." She didn't smile back, but she didn't look away either. The storm outside finally calmed, and silence fell again. Inside the small bag, two strangers lay close in the cold dark. One was human, the other not. But for now, they were alive, and that was all that mattered. Jason closed his eyes, still listening for danger. But his last thought before sleep was strange. He didn't feel alone anymore. The night had fallen into a strange quiet. Jason opened his eyes slowly, feeling the warmth beside him. Sira was still there, eyes closed, her breathing calm and steady. Outside the sleeping bag, the world remained silent, almost too silent. Jason felt something was wrong, though he didn't know what. He didn't move, but his senses were awake now, sharp from fear and cold. The fire inside his mind burned slowly, warning him of something near. Then he heard it, a sound so soft it could have been imagined. A faint crunch in the snow, slow and dragging. Not the wind, not an animal. Something that moved with purpose. Sierra's eyes snapped open. Glowing faintly in the dim light, she didn't speak. But Jason could feel the tension in her body. She was listening too, holding her breath. The crunch came again, this time closer. Then again, as if circling their crash site. Jason reached for the small flare gun hidden near his hip. But before he could touch it, Sierra's hand stopped him. She shook her head slowly and whispered, "No sound." He obeyed, his hand falling away. The fear growing inside him felt heavier than the cold. Another sound followed, like metal scraping across metal. Jason didn't understand it, but Sierra did. Her face grew pale, and her lips moved without sound. Then she whispered, "It followed me." He wanted to ask what it was, but she placed a finger on his lips. Her other hand slid quietly into the small pouch near her side. She pulled out a small crystal, dull and gray. She held it close and whispered something in her native tongue. Jason felt the air around them grow heavier. It was like the wind itself stopped moving. Then, from outside the wreck, something growled low, long and hateful. A heavy shadow passed. Just beyond the metal wall, the creature's form was strange and massive. With legs like broken bones and skin like shadows, it stopped near the edge of the sleeping bag shelter. Sniffing, Jason could see its claws digging into the snow. Its breath steaming in thick clouds. He didn't move, didn't blink. Sierra pressed the crystal to her chest and whispered again, a word that echoed in his ears like music and thunder. The creature screamed, its voice sharp and ugly. It stumbled back, claws flailing, its body steaming as if burned. Jason watched in shock as it disappeared into the dark, running from something unseen. He turned to Sierra, breathless, eyes wide. "What did you do?" he asked. She looked tired, her hand shaking slightly. "I used a forbidden word," she said softly. From the old times, Jason didn't understand, but he knew one thing: she had saved his life. Again, he stared at the crystal, now cracked and dim. "That thing. It knew you," he said. Sierra nodded slowly. "I escaped it once, long ago. It marked me, and it never forgets." Jason leaned back against the cold wall, trying to understand what kind of world he had landed on. This wasn't just a frozen planet. It was full of old powers, old enemies, and secrets, and somehow, he had landed right in the middle of it. Sierra lay down again, her face turned away from him. Jason watched her for a long time. He felt something strange in his chest, something more than fear. This girl, this alien, was not just surviving. She was protecting him. He whispered her name, and she opened her eyes again. "Thank you," he said simply. She didn't smile, but she nodded once. Then she said something he didn't expect. "If you stay, you'll see more. Things you were never meant to see." Jason closed his eyes, heart beating fast. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But he knew one thing for sure: he couldn't leave her alone. Not now, not after this. Outside, the wind picked up again. But this time, it didn't sound like a storm. It sounded like something whispering, calling, waiting. And somewhere deep in the shadows, the creature wasn't gone. It was watching, waiting, remembering. The warmth it could not touch. Jason woke to silence, not the peaceful kind, but the heavy silence that pressed down like a warning. His body was warm inside the sleeping bag, but the air around him felt different, thicker, darker, like something was holding its breath just beyond the edge of the broken ship. He turned slightly and saw Sierra sitting upright, her eyes glowing faintly, her face serious and still. She wasn't looking at him. She was staring at the crystal in her hand, now blackened and cracked. He sat up slowly, the sleeping bag falling from his shoulder. "Sierra," he whispered, "what did you do last night?" She didn't answer right away, as if deciding how much truth to tell. Then she said, "I spoke a word my people swore to forget." Jason waited, silent. Sensing this was not just some magic, it was history. My ancestors, she began softly, could shape the wind, freeze rivers, and speak to the stars. But long ago, they sealed that power away, called it dangerous, called it cursed. Jason frowned. Why cursed? She met his eyes for the first time that morning. Because every time it was used, someone died. Jason's breath caught. But you used it. Sierra nodded. To save you. She looked away then, her voice low. Now the power knows you. Too. He didn't know what that meant. But it sounded like something had changed in him as well. Something that couldn't be undone. He stood and looked around the wreck, noticing strange patterns in the snow, like sharp claws had danced around. Them in circles, but never stepped close. Did that creature run away because of the word? He asked. Sierra gave a short nod. It remembers pain, even old pain. Jason turned back to her, heart pounding. So what now? We move, she said simply, pulling her cloak around her shoulders. Staying here is like leaving blood. In the water, it will come back. They packed quickly. Sierra leading the way with quiet steps through the frost-covered trees. Jason followed, glancing behind often, always feeling watched. The trees were tall and twisted, their trunks silver. And barkless, they made no sound when wind touched them, no rustle, no creak. It was like the forest itself was holding secrets after hours of walking. They reached a small rise that overlooked a frozen river. Sierra stopped there, kneeling beside a strange symbol etched into the stone. Jason watched as she touched it gently. Closing her eyes, he asked what it meant, and her answer chilled him. It marks the edge of my people's land and the start of something older. Suddenly, the wind changed, blowing toward them from the north, and Jason smelled something. Strange, metallic and sharp. Sierra stood quickly, her eyes wide. It's not wind, it's a signal. Before Jason could ask what she meant, the ground beneath their feet began to hum. Low at first, then louder, like something waking deep underground. Sierra grabbed his hand, pulling him back into the trees. Her fingers were cold, but her grip was firm. She didn't speak, only moved fast and quiet like she had done it 1,000 times. Jason followed, breathless, heart hammering, behind them. The stone marker glowed bright green, then cracked down the middle. Something beneath it moved, not walking, but rising. Jason looked back and saw a tall figure, made of dark stone and blue fire, standing where they had just been. He stumbled. What is that? Sierra didn't look back. A sentinel, she said. They guard the old places, and they do not forgive. They ran deeper into the forest, the light from the sentinel chasing behind them through the trees. Jason didn't understand this world, didn't understand Sierra's past, but he knew one thing now. She was not just some alien girl lost in the woods. She was connected to something ancient, something powerful, something terrifying. When they finally stopped, hidden beneath the roots of a massive dead tree, Jason collapsed beside her. He looked at her, sweat on his face despite the cold. You knew this might happen, he said. Yes, she replied without looking at him. But I didn't want to be alone anymore. Jason's chest ached. Not from running, but from what he heard in her voice. It wasn't power she wanted, or even escape. It was connection, warmth, something simple in a world that had grown cold and cruel. He placed a hand on her shoulder, unsure what to say. Sierra closed her eyes and whispered, Now you've seen it too. The old world isn't sleeping anymore. The tree above them creaked, not from wind, but something else, and Jason knew deep inside his journey with her had only just begun. Jason didn't speak for a long time. He sat beneath the twisted tree, staring at the faint glow where the sentinel had risen. His breath steamed in the cold air, but he no longer felt it. Not really. Everything he thought he knew about survival, about aliens, about danger, it was all different now. Sierra sat next to him, quiet, unmoving. She looked smaller now, not because of fear, but because she was letting him see the weight she carried. He turned to her and asked softly, How long have you been alone? She didn't answer, not with words. Instead, She opened her pouch and took out a torn, faded piece of cloth. Jason recognized it immediately. It was human-made old earth fabric, worn and frayed at the edges. A patch from a uniform. He leaned closer and read the faded letters. UNIT 72M Reeves. His heart skipped. That's a human name. Sierra nodded, her voice almost a whisper. He was the first one. Jason blinked. First one what? Her fingers tightened around the cloth. The first human I shared my sleeping bag with. Silence fell again, heavier than before. She told him about Reeves. How his pod had crashed during an early exploration mission. How he had been kind, curious, brave. How he had laughed even when the snow fell hard. Jason listened closely, watching her face change with every memory. But her voice cracked when she reached the end. He tried to protect me from the Sentinels, she said. He stood between them and me. Jason swallowed hard. What happened? She didn't answer, but the tears in her eyes told the rest. The patch was all she had left of him. Jason leaned back, feeling the cold ground beneath him. He understood now. She wasn't just being kind or cautious, she was testing him. Testing if he would run, betray her, abandon her, like others had. I'm not like the others, he said gently. She looked at him, searching his face for truth. I know, she said at last, but the old world doesn't care who you are. Above them, the wind stirred the dead branches. Jason looked up and saw the sky shifting colors moving that shouldn't exist in nature. Ribbons of green and red, forming symbols that disappeared too fast to read. What's that? He asked. Sierra stood slowly, her eyes never leaving the sky. It's speaking, she said. The old language, the one from before the cold. Jason felt chills crawl down his spine. Can you understand it? Only some, she answered, but it's not meant for me this time. She pointed toward the glowing clouds, and Jason followed her gaze. He saw a shape forming tall, human-like, made of light and shadow. It pointed directly at him, then vanished. Jason's heart pounded. Why me? Sierra looked sad as she replied, because you touched me, and now the world thinks you're part of me. He stepped back, unsure, afraid. What does that mean? He asked. Sierra looked away. It means you're no longer a visitor here. Jason, the world has claimed you. For a long moment, Jason felt like running. Back to the crash site, back to the stars. Away from this ancient planet full of ghosts and power. But then he saw her small, strong, afraid but never giving up. And he couldn't leave her. Not after what she had shown him. Not after what they had faced together. He reached out and took her hand, surprising even himself. If I'm claimed, he said, then I won't go alone. Her eyes widened just a little, and her fingers squeezed back. Then stay close, she whispered. The next part won't be quiet. Just then, the ground trembled, soft but deep, like a heartbeat beneath the ice. Birds, or what looked like birds, scattered from the trees above. And a low hum filled the air, coming from all directions. Sierra's grip tightened. They're coming. Jason looked around, eyes wide. Who? She answered with a single word that made his blood run cold. The Council. The air pulsed with a low, deep sound, like the heartbeat of the planet itself. Jason stood still, holding his breath, feeling the vibration run up through his boots. Sierra didn't speak, but her body tensed like a bow pulled too tight. She was staring toward the frozen valley, where a soft golden light had begun to rise. Jason had never seen light like that, not from the sun, not from any ship. He stepped closer to her, voice low. Is that them? Sierra nodded, her eyes full of something he had never seen in her before, fear. The Council does not walk, she whispered. They float, they drift, they arrive only when the rules are broken. Jason frowned. What rules? She looked at him, almost angry, almost sad. You and me sharing warmth, he blinked. That's against the rules? Her voice was sharp now. It's not about warmth. It's about the bond, the change, the choosing. Before Jason could ask more, the light grew stronger. Shapes began to appear, floating above the snow-tall, thin figures in silver robes. their faces hidden behind white masks that shimmered like glass. There were 5 of them, and they didn't speak with voices. Their thoughts came straight into Jason's mind like cold water. "You are not one of us," a voice said inside him. "And yet, you carry our touch," another voice echoed. Jason grabbed his head. Overwhelmed by the pressure, Sierra stepped forward, her chin high. "He is under my protection." The voices quieted for a moment. Then one of them replied, "Then you must answer for it." A circular platform rose from the snow, made of glass and frost. Jason and Sierra were pulled toward it by unseen force. He tried to resist, but his feet slid across the ice like it was pulling his soul. The council stood above them, still and watching. Then the central figure raised a hand, and the snow around them disappeared. Suddenly, they were in a vast white hall, too large to be real. It was cold, but silent. The kind of silence that felt alive. Jason looked around, heart racing. "Where are we?" Sierra answered without turning. "This is the memory hall, where judgment lives." The central council member finally spoke, not in Jason's head this time, but out loud. "You have taken the outsider into your warmth. You have shared a bond forbidden since the Great Quiet." Jason stepped forward, anger breaking through his fear. "She saved my life, again and again. Is that a crime here?" The council member looked at him without emotion. "To protect is not the crime," it said. "To connect is." Jason turned to Sierra, confused. "Why do they care so much?" She looked down, her voice barely a whisper. "Because once before, long ago, one of us loved a human." Jason froze. Sierra continued. "And it broke everything." The council raised a hand again, and between them appeared a vision, a memory. Trapped in glass, Jason saw a woman like Sierra, wrapped around a human soldier. Both wounded, both smiling. Then flames, war, death, betrayal. The image shattered into snowflakes, falling softly around them. "That is what love brought," the council said. "That is what warmth created." Jason stepped in front of Sierra. "We're not them," he said. "We haven't hurt anyone." But the council replied, "The path is already set, the bond already formed. You will take the trial of warmth," Sierra gasped. "No, that hasn't been done in 100 years. It must be done now," the council said, "or he will be erased." Jason didn't know what that meant exactly, but the look on Sierra's face told him it was worse than death. He looked at her and said, "What's the trial of warmth?" She swallowed hard. "It's a test of survival between fire and frost, pain and trust, and we must pass it together." Jason nodded slowly, without fear. "Then we'll pass it." Sierra stared at him, her lip trembling. "You don't even know what it is." "I don't care," he said. "You're the reason I'm alive, and I'm not letting them erase anything." The council turned, and the floor dropped beneath them. Jason and Sierra fell into darkness, their bodies pulled by some unseen force, falling, faster and colder, until the ground caught them with a thunderous crash. Jason groaned, opening his eyes. They were in a dark, frozen cavern, stone walls glowing faintly blue. He saw a deep pit on one side and burning fire on the other. Above them, carved into the ice, were strange symbols that pulsed with light. Sierra sat up beside him, bruised but alive. She whispered, "This is the place." He looked at her and asked, "What do we have to do?" She took his hand gently and said, "We survive it, or we disappear forever." The first thing Jason felt was heat. Not the soft warmth from Sierra's sleeping bag, but blinding, biting heat that made his skin sting. Then it vanished in a second, replaced by ice so cold it felt like his blood froze. He gasped, falling to his knees, the ground below him shifting between burning rock and frozen stone. The air itself seemed alive, testing every inch of his body. Sierra cried out nearby, not in fear but in pain. Jason turned and saw her glowing slightly, her skin flickering between silver and pale blue. She was clutching her chest, her breath fast and broken. He crawled toward her, the ground pulsing between fire and frost. "Sierra, talk to me," he said. "What's happening?" She looked at him through tears. The trial is not a fight. It's a mirror, she said. It shows you everything you fear, everything you feel, and turns it into pain. Jason didn't understand until the air around him shifted again. Suddenly he was standing in his old bedroom back on Earth. He saw his father yelling, saw himself as a child, too small to fight back. Then fire filled the room, the floor cracked open, and he fell again. Screaming, when he landed, Sierra was there, shaking him. "It's not real," she said. "The pain is real, but not the place." Jason nodded, his teeth chattering. "How do we stop it?" She stared into the storm around them. "We don't fight it alone." Then the space around them twisted again, this time into a cave full of fire. The heat was so strong Jason dropped to the ground. Gasping for air, he heard a voice, not his, but Sierra's, echoing across the flames. "I will never be enough," the voice said. "They will always fear me." Jason reached for her, crawling through the fire. His hands burned, his skin blistered. But he kept going. He saw her curled up in the center, hiding from the flame. "Sierra, listen to me," he shouted. "You are not alone." The fire shrank back. Just a little. She looked up, her eyes wide, filled with shame. "They said I was cursed," she whispered. "Even my own mother left me." Jason grabbed her hand, ignoring the pain. "You saved me when no one else did." The cave faded into darkness, and the cold returned. Now snow fell around them, slow and silent. They stood on a frozen lake, too smooth and perfect. Then a crack echoed through the ice, and Jason felt the surface breaking. They began to sink slowly, the water like knives, but instead of pulling apart, they reached for each other, fingers locked tight. They pulled themselves onto the floating ice, shivering, soaked, but still alive. A voice echoed from the sky above. "The warmth is not just fire," it said. "It is trust, it is pain shared, and hearts opened." Sierra's lips trembled. This is the final part. A pillar of light rose between them. The trial now wanted a choice. Either Jason steps into the flame alone, or Sierra steps into the cold forever. Jason didn't hesitate. He moved toward the fire, his body ready to burn for her. But Sierra ran too, stepping in front of him. "No," she said. "This is my world, my test. I won't let you suffer it." Jason grabbed her hand. "We do this." Together, they stepped into the pillar, side by side. The cold and the heat clashed at once, tearing at their skin, their thoughts, their memories. But neither let go. Not once, then silence. The light vanished, the pain faded. The world returned. They were back on the platform, standing before the council once more. The masks stared at them, but none spoke. Finally, one raised a hand, and the others followed, the symbol of approval, of survival. "You have passed," the voice said, "and now you must choose your path." Jason turned to Sierra, breathing hard. "What does that mean?" She looked at him with something soft in her eyes, something he hadn't seen before. "It means we can stay," she said, "or we can run." Jason looked at the council, then at her. He didn't need to think about the answer. Jason's first breath in the open air felt like a gift, cool, sharp, and free of fire or frost. He stood beside Sierra on the silent hilltop, looking down at a world that no longer wanted to kill them. It looked the same as before, the twisted trees, the pale sky, the glowing snow. But something had changed. Not just around them, but inside them. The trial was over, but its mark remained. Jason could still feel the memory of the heat and the cold in his bones. He could still feel Sierra's hand in his, the way she didn't let go, not even when it hurt. And now, as the wind brushed against their faces, the council waited for their answer. No chains, no force, just a question carried on the wind. "Stay," it whispered. "Or go." Sierra looked up at him, her silver eyes softer now. "This is your moment," she said. "You don't belong here, not really." Jason looked away from her, out toward the stars barely visible in the sky. Somewhere out there was Earth. Somewhere out there was the life he lost when his ship crashed. But here was something he never expected to find. Not just survival, not just strange creatures and deadly trials. Here, he found her. She offered him warmth when he had nothing. She shared her shelter, her fears, her secrets, and in return, he gave her something she thought she'd never feel again. Trust. He looked back at her, quiet for a long time. Finally, he smiled. I don't care where I belong. I care who I belong with. Sierra blinked, as if she wasn't expecting that, but her smile returned, shy and bright at the same time. Then, come with me, she said. There's more to see. They walked down from the hill together, not toward a village or a city, but into the untouched wilds, where no path waited, where no one else had walked. Jason asked her, "What now?" She laughed gently. "Now we start our own story." Days passed, then weeks. They built a shelter between cliffs and trees, half machine, half nature. Jason learned how to catch skyfish from the frozen river. Sierra taught him to read the old symbols carved into rocks and roots. At night, they curled up in one sleeping bag, no longer because of cold, but because it felt right. Sometimes, Jason would wake up to find Sierra humming a tune from her childhood. Sometimes she'd watch him as he fixed broken tech from his wrecked ship. They didn't need to speak much, not anymore. The silence between them was never empty. Then one morning, a light fell from the sky. A rescue drone, blinking with Earth symbol, landed near their home. Jason stared at it for a long time, unsure of what he felt. He touched the signal panel, and the message spoke. Survivor located. Extraction. In 3 days, Sierra said nothing. She turned and walked away, her steps slow. Jason caught up to her and gently took her hand. "I have to decide," he said. She nodded, still not looking at him. "And I won't stop you." That night, Jason stood by the fire, staring at the stars again. He could leave, go home, tell the world about everything he'd seen. But what would Earth give him now? And what would he leave behind if he walked away from her? At dawn, the drone powered up, waiting. Jason stood in front of it, holding his decision. And then he turned away, walking back toward the cliffs, toward the one who never left him. He found her sitting under their old tree, arms wrapped around her knees. She didn't look at him as he sat beside her. He leaned close and whispered, 3 days was too long without you." Sierra looked at him then, and her eyes filled with warmth. Again, no more words were needed, not between them, not anymore, above them. The drone blinked once, then lifted off and disappeared into the sky. Back to Earth, back to questions. But down here, in the snow, in the silence, a human and an alien girl stayed wrapped in the same sleeping bag, not because they had to, but because they chose to, and the world watched quietly, this time, not to judge, but to remember.